Good choices and bad choices. The parable of Knucklebones. Many years ago, I travelled to Guatemala in Central America to a conference there. Yonggi Cho, a famous teacher, was speaking and I was keen to hear him. That wasn't the only reason. I also wanted to go and see the amazing Almalonga Valley, a story in itself, which I'll share another time, of provision, of trusting in somebody who then came through. The story for me ends after the conference when we went away for that week to go and see Almalonga. We had a group of New Zealanders and a group of Australians and a few others, hangers-on. There was, I think, about 12 to 15 of us, plus interpreters who went. At the end of the amazing week, we were out in a city away from Guatemala City and it was time to head home. As we were about to leave, we heard on the news that the rebels who had been fighting the Civil War and not been paid since the war finished 3 or 4 years before that, had taken over Guatemala City and were taking over cities in the surrounding areas. As they were taking over cities, we got together and prayed, what should we do? And we felt the Lord said we should move. Nobody had any resistance to that. Those who heard the Lord, those who didn't, move is a good idea. Guatemala City was where the airport was. That was the way out. Let's go. Into our vans we went. Travelled for half a day and we weren't far from the outskirts of the city when we were stopped at a roadblock. This roadblock, we thought we'd better find out what was going on and ask some people, and they said that they were searching each vehicle and stopping people coming in and out. So we sent someone to go and find out a bit more, and as they went to find out some more, one of the interpreters and another person, a local, off they went, and I got rather bored and sat on the side of the road and started talking to one of the local Mayan people who had come out of one of the villages. Very broken Spanish through an interpreter. After a while she gave up because she couldn't interpret enough and left. The person disappeared too and came back with a few children from the village, and I began talking with them and they couldn't understand a thing I said, so I thought, well, let's play some games. And I picked up some stones from the side of the road and started playing Knucklebones. This fascinated them. They joined in and laughed and seemed to get the game and rushed off again, and before long there was quite a few children on the side of the road. I was teaching them all, without any language, Knucklebones. Soon only one of the people we'd sent to the border control had come back saying, we need to move fast, we need to get out of here. But we can't go back to where we came from because that city, that large town had been taken over as well. And they were in a bit of a panic. The interpreter who'd gone with them had been arrested. There was a great kerfuffle, and one of the people came over to me and almost shrieked at me saying, what are you doing with these children? You're making a kerfuffle, you'll draw attention to us and they'll arrest us. I got up and walked over to the group and we stood together and I said, I think we should pray. They all agreed. Christians, most of them, they all agreed, even the ones that weren't. And so we stood together, and as we began to pray, more of the people from around in the blockade, in the cars that were backed up in this blockade, gathered around, and we had this huge circle of people holding hands and praying together as the children still ran in and out between us. The interesting thing at the end of that prayer was that the first person who had come back with the interpreter decided off their own bat, I'm going back to the blockade, I'm going back. I'm going to sort this out, I'm going to sort this out. They hadn't waited to hear what the Lord had said. They hadn't waited to hear the wisdom of the group. They hadn't waited to hear anything other than their own desires. So off they foolishly went, and we never heard from them again. Some of the group, as soon as we'd finished praying, started arguing about what should happen and where they should go and how we should get out of this. I immediately thought, I feel at peace that we should go back to where we came from, the town, the small city that we came from. We should get in the car and travel. We'd got the word very clearly before that we should travel, so we should travel, and I think we can't go forward, so let's go back. About half the group who prayed said yes, we get a real peace about that, that's what we should do. But the others in the group, They had the wisdom of man. They had their own wisdom that said, going back's dangerous, going forward's dangerous. We should stay put. Some of them said, no, we shouldn't. We should go somewhere else. We should try our luck over here. We should try our luck over there. There was great debate and argument. The first man made a complete decision by himself, off his own bat, no wisdom involved at all, just a gut feeling. It wasn't a very good gut feeling. The second group made a gut feeling, even though they'd prayed, they didn't listen for the answer. They argued and fought amongst themselves. The third group, we decided we should go back to where we came from. But it didn't make sense, said the second group. It's not logical. You see, the wisdom of God is foolishness to man, and the wisdom of man is foolishness to God. He knew better. He sent us on the right path. He gave us a peace. How do you know when you make a right choice? Because the peace that comes with it. We didn't really care what the other group decided because we had the peace. We knew what was right. We said, well, we're going. If you want to come with us. We got in our cars and most of us travelled back to where we'd come from. We travelled for quite a few hours into the night and then came on the radio a call that the city of Guatemala had been opened up by the rebels. They were giving people 24 hours to get their affairs in order before they attacked Parliament. So we had 24 hours to turn around and go back. The town where we had been taken over as well, and certainly the message hadn't got through to them, so we would have been arrested. But it was by travelling, by moving, by doing what the Lord had said, not staying still, that we managed to actually avoid issues and capture. So we did. We turned around and yet again travelled back to where we'd come from. Sometimes it's in the moving, it's in the doing that we actually achieve what we need to achieve. We got back to Guatemala City. Of course, we had the clearance to go. We got on our planes and came home. The wisdom of God is often back to front from what the world tells us to do. And so I think sometimes if it sounds easy, if it sounds logical by the world, be suspicious. This is what James says. James 1 verse 5, where it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you can't decide, then you should ask God. He gives generously to all without finding fault in you, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. You see, those people who, even though they prayed, they had double minds, they had double ideas. Yeah, they would ask God, but they were going to do what they thought anyway, or they weren't really listening to God, so they didn't hear from God. They were just going to do what they decided to do, what the world suggested they should do. Or even the first guy who didn't even bother asking God. But be careful not to be double-minded. Instead, think sometimes if it's the opposite to what you want, if it's the opposite to what you think in this world, it might just be what God wants. You see, wisdom to God is foolishness to man. And of course, at the end of the story, as I climbed into the plane and felt I was finally safe, I put my hand in my pocket and pulled out a handful of stones from our Knucklebones. This has been a Roo Rant. I'm Andrew Malcolm. Link on to my Roo Rant channel and subscribe if you want to hear some more of my stories. Shalom.